Hello and welcome back to another episode of our draft series. We're less than a week now to the draft, which means we have to procrastinate and get as many of these guys discussed in the next few days as we can. I think hopefully we will get through the list of guys we were hoping to talk about, but we'll see. Today we're going to talk about Tyler Shough. Probably the last guy that most people think has a chance to go in the first couple rounds. But before we get into Shough as a player, John, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I know you've done a couple quarterbacks that I wasn't really planning on watching without me, but happy to get on for some of these that I've gotten around to watching. So
All right, let's get into Shough. I feel like we just have to start with the background. He is so old, like it
yeah,
is unbelievable. He was born in the previous century, which for some of you listening, that doesn't make you old, but in terms of quarterback prospects, that does make you old.
I think I would be an old quarterback prospect at this point too.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm like the same age as most of the guys coming out now. But this is a whole nother level. He was in the same recruiting class as Trevor Lawrence. Like
yeah,
that just blows your mind. Lawrence is on his second contract at this point. He was a highly lauded recruit that went to Oregon. Was behind Herbert at Oregon. Didn't really get the chance to play. Dealt with injuries. Went to Texas Tech. Had multiple season-ending injuries. And then transfers to Louisville in his last year of eligibility, which the reason he was in college for so long is partially because of the injuries that allowed him to, get those extra medical redshirt seasons, and has a very impressive last season at Louisville that has, allowed him to become very relevant in this year's NFL draft conversation. And when you watch him, you see why he was graded so highly as a high school recruit, which is why I think it makes this eval very interesting. Typically, the guys that come on like this very late in their college careers, think of Kenny Pickett, who was significantly older than most of the guys he's playing against. You start to get weary thinking, okay, why did it take so long for this guy to start to have success?
yeah,
With Shough, the answer is very obvious, which is he was hurt the whole time before. Like there was not really an opportunity for him to get his feet under him and get repeated experience to allow him to develop. But he's still, he's still old, right? He still has
yeah.
been in college long enough where it is a huge factor for him. So I think Shough is an interesting eval. Feel free. I don't know if you have anything to add on the age piece, but I think we're going to come back to that multiple times throughout this conversation.
Yeah, I think just the idea that it's a little bit of an unknown. We've had old quarterbacks, but it's not always for this reason. Usually, when it is, they're not seen as like legitimate potential prospects. So it is a little bit of an unknown and kind of a lottery ticket. So I think that's one reason, like you factor in some of the good tape, teams are kind of seeing the upside and might want to take him really high. But like you said, we'll probably get back around to some of those things.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that goes along with that in the age/injury discussion is the types of injuries that he dealt with. I don't have the full list of everything he went through, but generally speaking, these were not ligaments, tendons, things like that. They were like breaking bones and things that sometimes I don't know if this is a correct term, but things a lot of people describe as freak injuries, right? That are kind of just bad luck that you have the chance to recover from. I don't At this point it's been enough of a pattern. I don't know if you could just completely write them off for Shough, but I would much rather someone have those injuries than to have already torn their Achilles or already torn their ACL or things like that, which also feeds into why I think this is a very interesting player because you can genuinely convince yourself that this guy is still going to have plus physical traits at the NFL level. And normally, a guy that's 25 years old that has suffered multiple season-ending injuries, that is just like an absolute non-starter to have positive physical outcomes. And it seems like for Shough, that might actually happen.
Yeah, well, and I pulled up the list while you were talking. It looks like he had an ankle injury. I'm guessing some kind of like high ankle sprain. Doesn't say specifically. Broken fibula, and then broke his collarbone twice, the
Yeah.
same one. And that was the one that I was remembering off the top of my head, because I remember Aaron Rodgers did that in the middle of his pro career and then came back and still played at a high level. And that was one that I was like, okay, those you really can just completely overlook. That shouldn't affect a guy. If he's going to be good, he can get past that. Um, yeah, I don't know if you want to go ahead and get into it, but another reason I think that people are looking at him as like, we like this guy. There's something here. Some of the same typical things that scouts see. You look past the age, the frame is incredible. He's 6'5", 220. He does show some athletic ability when he runs. So just the pure
Yeah, he ran a
size and force he
4.61,
has.
which,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
dude, what?
You're talking
I
a
was stunned when I
9.53
saw that
athletic
number.
score, or relative athletic score, and like.
Yeah, and that does not show up on tape. Like the four,
I want to talk about that because it doesn't.
I looked up the combine numbers after I watched him and was like, there is
Yeah.
no way. Like, there's no way. But you watch him run, he looks really smooth. And there are times where like you see him run straight line, like you can see it. Like he is a legit athlete. But yeah, we'll get into that and how functional the athleticism really is. Okay, I think that's a good like overview on some of the like non-football stuff around him. I think he is one of the more complicated guys in terms of all of that in this draft cycle. Now let's just like get into him as a prospect. We'll start with the throwing. I really enjoyed watching his tape from a throwing perspective. I think like you talked about the frame already. He uses that to his advantage as a player. Like he gets to so many different arm angles from different positions in the pocket. I think that's probably the thing I was least expecting going into his tape was the creativity he has as a thrower. Yep. Like he legitimately finds angles that most guys like don't even think about, and they're throws that a lot of times are pretty accurate. Like he actually can throw from those awkward arm angles that a lot of guys really struggle with. I would not describe his arm as an elite arm in terms of like arm strength velocity, but it's definitely enough. Like it's certainly enough to allow him to play at the NFL level. So yeah, John, what are your thoughts in terms of his throwing ability?
Yeah, I had the same notes. He really does show some good velocity ball. It's at least above average, if not to that good level as a prospect. Plenty of showed good accuracy to the field. Some really difficult throws to the sideline, is able to put it really tight those. He layers the ball well on some of those. And you mentioned the arm angles. I had arm angles with an exclamation point because it was, like you said, I wasn't expecting it when I started watching him. And I thought that he was going to be another one. It's like senior comes out of nowhere and it's like operating kind of efficiently, but it's all yak or it's all really simple stuff. And no, he made some really difficult throws in this offense that we can go ahead and kind of mention. The Louisville offense it has been for a long time because it's been the same system for a while. It's like this pro style ready, quarterbacks that are playing in it, if they're showing good things, then they're going to be ready to play in an NFL system. It still kind of has that reputation, and I think that's one of the things that people also respect on him. Is not only is he making some of these throws, but he's doing it in this pro ready system, quote unquote. However people want to define that.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot closer to pro ready than most of the guys that you watch. Like college schemes are probably trending more and more away from that, but you see him throw to the opposite sideline from the far hash. Like he can make those legit throws that most teams just never ask their guys to even attempt. And you see times where he makes difficult throws with touch over the middle of the field that, again, most teams are trying to avoid their quarterbacks having to make. I think Louisville saw that this was a weapon for them. Like they actually could use this to their advantage. Yeah. Overall, like I was very impressed with his throwing. It's not perfect. I don't think he is like, I would not put him in the elite accuracy bucket. I think it's more like good, like, a B to B plus, which is also kind of where I would put the arm strength. But in terms of a thrower, like this is a legit guy. Like I was very impressed.
Yeah, and you mentioned the B. I kind of put him there overall, just as a passer. He's kind of a B, and that you can bet on that. Like you would definitely take a chance on, especially comparing it to some of the other prospects that might have might be weighted more in one area but deficient in another. Like he's a little more well-rounded as just a thrower.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think um, the only real issues I saw with him is like we said, it's just not like super clean like you might hope. Like
Yeah.
there's still misses, there's still things you wish you would clean up. I also thought at times his throwing motion was a little long, which for a guy that's 6'5" and throws with a lot of arm angles, probably not the biggest surprise. Like I don't have a ton of places where I want to pick nits with him. I think overall he was an impressive player from a throwing perspective. Let's get to the athleticism now. I think that is an interesting piece with him. I think if you're trying to talk yourself into Shough, you just go to the combine numbers and you're like, look at this. Like this guy, 6'5", he runs a 4.61. You see all of the creativity he has with his arm. Like this is a guy with elite tools. And I do think that the top speed is impressive. Like there's a couple times where you do see it on tape, but from an athleticism perspective in terms of escaping the pocket and making quick cuts and playing with agility, I don't think he is very good. I think that at that point you see like the long frame, a little bit of awkward movement and things like that start to affect him. And those are the types of things that concern me for him at the NFL level, because I think from like an in structure pure throwing perspective, this is a very good prospect. The off structure piece, especially like creating with his legs, and we'll get to some of like the mentality part later. That's where you start to have some more questions. It's not terrible, but it's not a plus trait like the throwing is.
Yeah, I think that it grades out as like you can't even count the athleticism because he never used it.
Yeah.
You go back to Oregon, they did dial up some like read options, some quarterback runs, but then he has this long history of injuries, and I think that really played a factor in this. And you mentioned the mentality, so I'll hold off on one point. I think that these injuries really affected him from that point as far as like running. I don't think he was deciding to take off and run. Um, I think that he was wanting to hang in the pocket for the length of his reads. Was it? He was not looking to escape too often. He's not looking to scramble. He's not looking to start out and improvising. He's running the play as designed. And if you're really looking at that, then what good is a 4.61 at 6'5", 220?
I think the injury point you made is really good, because I think the NFL teams will view it the same way. Like this guy's been hurt too many times for us to run him, and he's not a Milrow or one of those guys where you have to run him because it's just such a plus trait. Like I think you're probably saying at this, okay, he's a decent enough athlete where maybe we can ask him to do it, but I also just didn't like watching him take contact. At times I was like, I kind of see why he got hurt at points. Like he's not the smoothest like faller.
No.
Things like when he's running, it's like, yeah, I can see why like you landed on your collarbone a couple times and had problems. But yeah, I don't think it will be a big part of his game at the NFL level.
And I'll also add the 6'5", 220. It's a good amount of weight, but he doesn't look very big.
No,
he
doesn't.
Tall, of course, but he looks skinny. So I think that he's one that he may not had so many injuries if he put on a little bit more muscle mass, and he had to do hasn't really done it. So I think that would worry me a little bit too about future injuries. If he's going to be taking hits because he's not using his athleticism to get away from pressure, he needs to be a little bit bigger. He needs to be in the 230 to 240 range for his feet.
Yeah, and that piece of it, I think, gets into some of the mentality as well with like questions about injury, because I think you can tell with the amount of times he throws the ball away that he is. That's what I was. He is very much trying to not get hurt, because that is the other thing that scares me the most. This is probably the number one concern for me. Is he he will throw the ball away when there is anybody close, and I don't. For their offense last year, I don't necessarily hate that approach. Like they were a successful enough offense where like getting to the next play at times was
Yeah.
probably the best decision because like he was going to find somebody and make a great throw on the next
And it
snap.
kept him on schedule, and he didn't take a
Yes,
lot of sacks. So
yes, like it's kind of it's that same trade off, right? Like how much are you going to scramble versus how many sacks are you going to take? There are only the few aliens like Josh Allen who can scramble all the time and never get sacked, right? Like most everyone else operates on this trade off of how often are you going to scramble versus how many sacks are you going to take. And he is on the far end of that. He is never gonna. He does not take sacks, but he throws the ball away all the time. I think that I actually like it. It's weird. I think he sees the field really well off script. Like there are times where he, especially in the red zone, like I think he sees through tight windows at a very high level, but you just don't. It's very hard to project that as being a part of his game if he continues to throw the ball away as much as he does.
yeah, and I think that there were even some plays where he'd go through his reads, and he is one of the few that I said like he reads it out and anticipates pretty well.
Yeah,
And I guess you'd expect that being an older guy, plenty of experience. Um, but it's like if he goes and things there, he's immediately throwing it away. He's not going to be trying to try to buy time and extend the play. Like I said, as soon as he feels a little bit of pressure, the play is open in his mind. And sometimes throwaway, he is like desperate to get the ball away and leads to some pretty kind of crazy throws that I think are worse than just taking the sack.
yeah.
But
That is definitely the time where you see him struggle the most. Like when he starts to panic outside the pocket, that's really the only time where I very much question his decision making. Like I think when he's comfortable and not worried about taking contact or things like that, most of the time you can see exactly what his thought process was. Those are the times where you can see it, and it's understandable. Like especially as a guy that's gone through that many injuries, like I would probably be doing the same thing if I had been hurt that many times. But it is something you see on tape. Overall, I think he sees defense as well. I thought he reacted pretty well against the blitz, which I guess for a guy that gets the ball out as quickly as he does and like avoids contact, that's probably not a huge surprise that he's comfortable operating in that style. But I think overall his pocket movement is good. Like I was impressed with his ability to like sidestep pressure and feel the pocket. It's just when pressure actually starts to get home, that's where you start to be a little bit more concerned about his ability to handle it.
yeah, I agree. I think he did navigate the pocket really well, but then one thing I noticed he did quite a bit, and this is not just him, but I think this was especially bad for him. He stepped out of throws a lot as soon as
Yeah.
pressure was in his face, and I that goes back to the injuries, and he's trying not to get hurt, and doing that just throws leads to inaccurate passes. And I think that was when you saw his accuracy suffer the most, was when he got a little pressure and then he steps out of it. And it also hurts his arm strength. You know, he's got a good arm, but sometimes when he's stepping out of throws like that, he it doesn't look like he has as much arm as he actually does. You know, he can barely put anything on the ball.
Yeah, I have a clip that will kind of illustrate that later, so I'm excited that you brought that up. A couple other notes just on his mentality. I think overall he does a good job of finding the check down, which for him is important because he's if he's going to get the ball out quick, he's got to be accurate in that way because that is going to be his safety valve. But I thought he did a pretty good job of that. And then lastly, and a thing that I really liked about his game, I feel like he does not just take the underneath throw if it's open. I think he will try to go from good to great and really read out, like, do I have this guy downfield? Okay, if I don't, okay, I'll take the easy throw short. I really liked his mentality of I am starting with the aggressive throw and then I will work my way back. And I know some of that is scheme dependent and it's what guys are being asked to do. But when you see a guy do it on tape, that to me is a big positive because that shows like you can ask him to make downfield reads, and I think he has clearly shown he is able to handle that.
Yeah, and a lot of what we said sounds like he's a very safe player. I think that he is really cautious, but he is not afraid to rip it. And go back to what you were just saying about like trying to find that bigger play downfield. Like he really is not afraid to look for that and let it go if he sees it there. And with his arm talent, he can make some of those throws. So
Yep.
should be looking for those.
All right, let's get into some clips here, and then we'll finish with comps and our grade. So, John, I will share my screen with you as well. All right. So, one thing I will preface these clips with at first is I don't have a single negative clip for Shough that I'm planning to go through. And I was thinking, like, normally when I'm going through and watching a game, I'll just, like, kind of note down, like, certain plays I want to talk about as I'm going through and then get to the end and see, like, okay, what do I have? And I never pulled a bad play from his game against Miami. And the reason for that is not because he played a perfect game. It's because I think, as we talked about, his bad plays most of the time are just duds. Like, I'm not going to show a bunch of tape of him throwing the ball away or, just kind of like making a meh throw. So I'm not suggesting based on these 5 plays that he is like some perfect player that doesn't make mistakes. It's just like we're trying to pick things that are actually interesting to watch. And most of his plays that are more negative are just kind of meh. Like, they're just not as much there. Okay, let's get into these. The first play here is going to get to what we talked about with he will kind of freak out when pressure starts to arrive. So let's roll it here. He drops back. Here he's trying to make a play, escape the pocket, whatever. Guys gets arms around him. Watch this throw, man. He just whips this throw across the field. This is probably a terrible idea, but I actually think it kind of like summarizes his play pretty well, because you see the sack avoidance tendency, like, I'm not going to take a sack, but you also kind of see the arm talent of, like, how on earth does he get this throw off and get it close to the receiver. This is not a very, like, replicable play for him at the next level, but I think it does, like, show a lot of his characteristics in like the style that he plays.
Yeah, this is one of those plays that I was like, well, it technically wasn't. It didn't end negatively for them, but this was one of the ones that I was thinking about. It terrified me watching it. I'm like, I would not want to be throwing that ball with NFL corners out there. But they're gonna,
and that's a third down. Like, why are we doing that?
And that's a pick six. Like, yeah. So
okay, this one as well.
He did have a couple of those as well.
Yes,
but
this play as well, you're going to see a little bit of the scared play against pressure, and this is what you were talking about how he will open up on throws and not commit his full body to it. Like, you see here, the shoulders start to open up. He's kind of leaning away from contact. But again, he delivers the throw on time, on target. He has the arm strength to get it out there. If you can make this work, I don't hate it, but I think you would like to see him hang in there just a little more and make this throw in rhythm. But you start to see, like, most quarterbacks in college have no shot of completing that if their front side starts to leak, and he still delivers the throw.
Yeah, you said it all there. I mean, you don't want this, but he's able to do it. And most guys, if they step out of that, it's bouncing 2 or 3 yards in front of the receiver.
Yeah.
So, including one of the other quarterbacks that I think we'll talk about in this class.
Yeah. This clip, I think you just see his ability to diagnose, like, kind of muddy pictures at times. Louisville runs this bunch set. Both these guys are just going to run like a stop here. And this is not like the clearest picture. This receiver's being covered pretty tight. You see him confidently deliver this throw. This receiver does a good job of, keeping this linebacker from being able to make a play on the ball. But Shough hits this throw right on the money. Like, this is the type of stuff. You see the anticipation. You see the arm strength that he's able to deliver the ball with. And just overall, like, that's not an easy throw. That's not the most clear picture for him to see, and I think he handles it very well.
Yeah, I thought he read zone coverage very well, generally, and he was able to pick it apart usually.
Another thing Shough does very well is throw with touch. You see here, he reads this out immediately. This is probably, you could argue this is a little bit underthrown, but what I like to see from this film is he realizes exactly which defender he needs to worry about here, and he does not give him a chance in the world to catch this ball. Like, there's no shot for this defender to make a play. He's able to confidently throw this with anticipation, lead his guy towards the sideline. Probably wish you could throw that a little bit more upfield so that you're not pulling your guy down. But those are the types of plays where you see, okay, he's thinking about this the right way.
Yeah, and I think this also goes back to your point, like good accuracy, not great.
Yes.
It's probably a B, but he reads it well and he knows to put touch on it. He is really good at layering.
All right, this is probably my favorite clip for him. He just rips this throw over the middle of the field. Again, like kind of the feet aren't great, but he makes it work. And the end zone angle of this throw is so good. Like you see the ability to, he pump fakes. He kind of whips this throw with his offensive lineman kind of falling back into him, and he's still able to get this throw off and make it accurately. I don't know if the spin move he does here is necessary, but you see here this throw, like he puts it on the perfect shoulder for this guy, leading him away from the defender in the middle of the field, pins it on his shoulder, allows the guy to not get leveled by the safety as he's going upfield by getting the ball to him early enough. So yeah, those types of plays for him, you can see this game was a little bit of a shootout here, 52-38. Are why Louisville was able to stay in this game against Miami.
Yeah, and he has plenty of these plays on tape where his arm talent just wins out, and that I think that's, if you're betting on anything with him, it's his mental ability to read and go through progressions and his arm talent.
All right, let's get into the comps for Shough. This is a guy I think you can kind of go like two different ways with the comps. I think you can try to find somebody with like more of the interesting athletic profile and solid arm talent, or you can look more at like the frame and the play style, and I think those are like kind of the two things I was trying to balance as I thought about a comp. I ended up going with Nick Foles as my best case, as a guy that at his best was probably a like top half of the league guy, never stepped into the top 10 conversation probably. Also didn't have a super long prime. Like I don't think Shough is a guy with, given his age and injury history, that I would want to bet on being your quarterback for the next decade, but had a very good run of play. You see the size with him in a similar way, and Foles has a very good arm and was a pretty accurate thrower at the NFL level. So that's what I see as kind of a best case for Shough. I think Foles probably had a slightly better arm and Foles I think ran like a 5.13 40-yard dash. So like that's where this comp like falls apart, is the raw athleticism piece. But I think in terms of the way they play and their arm talent, we're not too far off.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, especially for like the pinnacle of what Foles achieved. Like he was a good player at his best, but I don't think he was elite. I don't think he was great. He was not in the like top 10 quarterbacks for sure. So I kind of went a similar route. I would say this guy was a little bit better, but I went with Matt Schaub. I kind of see them both playing similarly, relatively safe as far as like decision making when they're throwing the ball. I don't think Shough uses athleticism. Schaub was definitely not a guy, like, he was fine in the pocket, but he was not a guy that was going to break out and make anything happen. Pretty accurate guy, but overall was just smart and knew where to go with the ball, and had enough arm to make it work. You also think the reason that Schaub was so successful was being in the Kubiak and system. And I think that Shough could similarly like be that kind of Brock Purdy minus some of the running around creativity type of player. But
yeah, I agree. I do think he projects well in those systems, just given his ability to make all the throws. I think this is a guy where like you can't be asking him to run, but I feel pretty good about his ability to fit in most NFL offenses. Like
Yeah.
I think he has enough talent as a thrower where that is not something that scares me very much. All right, who is your worst case?
Worst case, I was thinking more along the lines of older guy, broke out late, um, had a good arm, but never really put it together in the NFL and really just didn't have enough time to. So I said Brandon Weeden. I'm probably playing too much on the injury here or the age factor here, but I think Weeden was 7 when he was drafted. Shough's 25. He'll be 26 for his entire rookie year. And I think that at that age, you just wonder how much more can they grow, can develop before they're into their 30s, especially if they have injury problems. They're just not giving you that much time to get better. You know, he's a guy that if you took him first round and you use the 5th-year option, he's going to be well into his 30, like a couple into his 30s before his second contract. Yeah. So he's probably only got 2 contracts in the NFL.
Yeah, that Weeden was one of the guys I looked at. I was not like, I could not tell you anything about Weeden as a prospect. Yeah. So I was like going back and reading scouting reports. It was pretty similar. Like I thought the way Weeden was talked about as like a pure thrower and arm talent was like a step up from where Shough is. But yeah, I definitely think that comp makes sense, especially you talked about the age. My worst case was Mike Glennon, which is like, you know, just I was trying to find another guy that plays with like that type of frame who like his game just never really translated to the NFL. Similar things like just no mobility, kind of an awkward player. And he was not clean enough with the accuracy, throwing, all that stuff to ever find success. And if Shough ends up failing, that's probably what his career looks like. Anything to add on the comps there?
I think the Glennon one is really good because he's still a guy that flashed a little bit at the NFL level, but never really put it together. And, you know, he was just a backup for a little while and petered out.
Yeah, the Bears like legit paid him, which is
they did
crazy to look back on.
And, just based on the flashes, but
he
didn't do anything after that.
And then you get the Mitch Trubisky years after that. But I do think that like if Shough performs really well, it could be a situation like that where somebody's like, oh, this like we should pay this guy, like this is gonna be our guy, and then it never really works out.
Because he's like 31 just based on a couple games, and then he's too old and can't figure it out at that point.
And that's the thing, like he will have to show teams his talent early on. Teams are not going to be patient with him if he does not look like he has it after 2 or 3 years. He'll be a backup the rest of his career and probably a guy that doesn't play very much, which might be unfair, but he's also like I am very confident based on his tape that if this guy was 22 and did not have an injury history, he would be a first round pick and he would be the second quarterback taken in this draft. Like I think his tape is clearly the second best tape that I've watched so far. Still a few guys left. Like I've not watched Kyle McCord yet, but I definitely think his tape is the second best tape I've watched. I think it's better than Sanders. I think it's better than Dart, Milroe. I don't know if you agree with that, but that is the biggest question with him is like a lot of these outside factors.
Yeah, I agree with that just because I think he has the least amount of negatives on the tape. And I think the negatives he does have are kind of the external factors that you're weighing when you're trying to put in the grade for these guys.
All right. I'll give my grade. I ended up with him as a late second. My heart wanted to put him higher than that. Like at first when I started watching, I was like, is this a first round guy? I think everybody probably did that when they first started watching him. And then you just start to think more about the other things at play here. And it's just hard to do it. I would have no problem with the team taking him with their early second round pick. Like if a team like Cleveland, New York, any of those teams, I think I'd rather see Cleveland do it just because this is a guy I want to play early. I don't want this guy to sit. I think this guy works best on a team that needs a quarterback that they can drop into a decent situation. But I would have absolutely no problem with the team taking him early second. Obviously my grade is late second, but like teams don't get to decide what part of the round they pick in. Like if a team takes him there, like I have no problem with that. I think he would be a starter for a team and be a fairly good player. Your ceiling's probably limited with him, but yeah, I like Shough. I think he's a talented player, and I would not mind a team, taking a bet on him in the second round.
Yeah, I ended up a little bit lower on him. The age and injury stuff just scares me too much, and I think more than anything with the injuries, I think it's really affected the way that he plays the game. And I'd be worried that if he got injured again, it could change the way he plays again. So I have him as like a fourth round guy. I can't, I haven't. I'm kind of flip flopping him and Milroe currently. Milroe is obviously the opposite of like raw tools and like
Yeah, just so different.
raw tools and nothing else. And Shough is kind of the ready to go, plenty good arm. But I don't know if he gives you much ceiling overall. So I have him as a fourth rounder. I could see teams taking him second or third round. At this point, I'm pretty sure he's not going first round. He did get that buzz early on, but I think teams have kind of pushed most of the quarterbacks except Cam Ward, who's definitely going first.
Yeah.
It pushed a lot of them down the board as the draft season's gone on. So, but
I do think like you mentioned Milroe, like the teams that are thinking about taking Milroe are not taking Shough. Like they're just, I think you're like, you're a Milroe team or you're a Shough team. Like there's no overlap there whatsoever. So like the grade you have between those players almost isn't that important. Like if a team decides that they're wanting to like invest in developing Milroe, they're clearly targeting a certain type of player that Shough is not. Yeah. So yeah, like that's where like the team specific thing gets very different from what we're trying to do, which is like look at it from a big picture perspective. Because that like your situation on like, are you trying to develop a guy? Do you need a guy to start immediately? It makes such a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I have them at the same grade, but I completely agree with you that if you're going to take Shough, then you're not going to be interested in a developmental type like Milroe, and vice versa. If you're trying to maximize Milroe's tools, then Shough is not your quarterback because I think he's mostly maxed out at this point. Like he's showing you what you want to see, but I don't know how much more he's going to give you than what he's got on tape right now.
Yep. In terms of fits, I don't know. It's hard when you get to guys outside the first round to talk about. Like,
it is because anybody could take it at any point. They can.
Especially once you get to the third or fourth, like a team that has a good starting quarterback could still just take him and say like we like him as a backup. Like that is a perfectly fine thing to do with a later, especially like once you get to day 3, like fourth round picks and later. Like you see teams do that all the time, even if they feel great about their starter. In terms of like second round teams, I think Cleveland is one. Like if they came away with like Hunter at 2 and Shough in the early second round, like I would really like that for them. I think that's a step in the right direction and provides them with some immediate direction. Maybe the Saints, like that for them. Maybe the Jets. Like if the Saints pass on a guy, but the Jets is another one. Like it's these teams that have good enough rosters where if they actually threw like a slightly above average quarterback in, you could see them becoming a good team pretty quickly. Like those are the teams I would be looking at for him as a starting option. Yeah,
I feel like if Shough had been on the Jets like 1 or 2 years ago, they wouldn't have been in the situations that they were. Trying to run out Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, whatever he is at this point in his career. Like I feel like Shough would have outplayed both of those quarterbacks. So I think Jets would be a good fit. I like your Cleveland idea, and I wouldn't hate taking him in the second round, even though I have a lower grade on him, because they have a good team. All they need is something at quarterback, which they've had completely nothing for a couple of years now. So
yeah, it is like they are in such a dire situation with like the Watson contract where they almost have to take risks, because if they don't, they're just dead. So like it's like a company that's about to go bankrupt. Like you just take infinite risks, because who cares? Like if you go bankrupt, you go bankrupt. So they've got to try something. Anyways. Yeah, like they've got to try something. The Rams don't have a second round pick. They do have multiple thirds. So maybe if they came back around, but again, like I don't know that I want him sitting behind Stafford for another year or two. So I don't think that makes as much sense for them. But there are definitely a few fits, and once you get past that, like anybody could like him after that. Okay. Anything else you want to add on Shough?
Surprisingly, he had 951 attempts in this class, which is on the lower end. You know, we'll talk about one guy has over 2,000 attempts in his career, so it's just funny that the oldest guy has he's on the lower end in attempts because of the injury stuff. But just an interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, very different than the like Case Keenum, Kellen Moore, like that kind of type of quarterback where they just put up like crazy numbers for 5 years, and you're like, well, I guess this guy deserves to be drafted. Yeah, very very interesting eval. All right, that'll do it for the Shough episode. We'll hopefully have a few more of these coming out in the next couple days. So be on the lookout for those as we approach the draft on Thursday night. So thanks for joining, Jon.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, we will be back soon. Thanks everybody for listening.